She should be thanking me for letting her live here, my mother snapped across the dinner table, her words cutting sharp and loud enough for my 13-year-old son Jaden to hear. Before I could even respond, my brother Kevin, stuffing his mouth, with the second helping of the roast chicken I had prepared, added without looking up, "Her kid eats because of us." I stayed silent, at least for now, just exchanging a glance with Jaden. Slowly, he stood, reached into his hoodie pocket, and pulled out a white envelope. Calm and steady, he placed it before my mother and said quietly, "Clear as day. The landlord asked me to give you this. Mom, the rent's already paid for the whole year." The room went deathly silent, but this moment didn't happen overnight. It was 8 months of living under my mother's roof, not by choice, but necessity. I'm Amamira, 36, a single mom whose life unraveled all at once last year. After losing my job due to medical leave, the eviction notice arrived like a thunderclap, leaving me nowhere to turn. Pride kept me from reaching out, but when it came to protecting Jaden, I swallowed it and called my mother, who begrudgingly allowed us to stay. No lease, no deadline, just a vague promise of, "until you get back on your feet." From day one, I wasn't family, I was a guest, an invisible presence in a house where every meal and every night's rest became a debt I'd never repay. I cooked, cleaned, worked nights in exhaustion while my unemployed younger brother, Kevin, lounged in the basement, throwing shade and harsh remarks like, "Maybe pitch in for the water bill sometime," while never buying a single grocery. Jaden witnessed it all, smarter than I expected, sensing my quiet tears and slammed doors but never voicing a complaint, just holding me tighter at night. Despite the shame and pain, something fierce in me refused to break. I worked tirelessly, scrimped and saved, hunted for a small 2-bedroom apartment near Jaden's school, negotiated, prepaid rent, and kept everything hidden, preparing for the day my mother's cold remarks would finally come. When she said, she should thank me for letting her live here, and Kevin claimed, "Her kid eats because of us," I didn't argue. I let Jaden speak for both of us. That envelope was my proof, my quiet defiance, my victory. Life doesn't unravel in a cinematic crash. It slips like a loose thread on a favorite sweater until everything unravels before you realize it. I was just a receptionist with a modest life until illness, hospital bills, and lost income turned me into a liability, then a burden, then invisible. But I refused to let it define me. I fought for every dollar, every hour, every breath, because no matter how dark the night, I was determined to give Jaden a home, dignity, and a future. And finally, after months of struggle, I claimed my small corner of the world, an apartment that's ours, mine and Jaden's, a fresh start carved out from pain, perseverance, and quiet strength. I paid the landlord up front for a whole year, but I didn't tell my mom, I didn't tell Kevin. No one but Jaden knew, because I wanted the truth to come out at the moment it would hurt the most. If you've ever lived in someone else's home, not as a welcome guest but as a living reminder of your failures, you understand how the walls start to close in, how the light turns harsh and unforgiving, and even your own breath sounds too, loud in the silence. That was my life in my mother's house. At first, I told myself I was imagining things, the sideways glances, the biting remarks, the heavy judgment. They were just my nerves playing tricks, but they weren't. They were real, relentless, and they cut deep. Dinner was the worst. That table was a battleground where every bite came with a sermon on gratitude. My mother stirred her stew and spat out lines like, "Not everyone would open their home so freely." Kevin smirked from the corner, tossing out snide comments like, "Especially not with the price of groceries these days." I kept my head down, eyes fixed on my plate, sometimes nodding to keep the peace, sometimes trying to steer the conversation away, but nothing worked. They wanted me to feel small, invisible, a burden, and slowly I began to believe them. The worst part? They didn't know that. While they whispered and sneered, I was working nights, cleaning offices downtown, leaving at 7:30 every evening right after the dishes, coming home at 2 or 3 a.m., slipping in quietly, showering, stealing. A few hours of sleep before waking up to get Jaden ready for school. No one asked where I went. No one cared. As long as the house was spotless, Jaden was silent and I kept my mouth shut. But Jaden noticed everything. He started packing my lunches, sometimes sitting with me as I laced up my shoes, asking softly, "How much longer until we have our own place?" I'd smile and say, "Soon, baby, very soon." The money trickled in, slow and steady. Office wages don't stretch far, but I took every extra shift, accepted last-minute calls, stopped spending on anything unnecessary. No coffee runs, no hair appointments, living on peanut butter sandwiches, and sheer pride. Eventually, I saved enough, paid a whole year's rent up front, and the landlord even gave me a small discount for the lump sum. I remember clutching that receipt like a lifeline, feeling like I could finally breathe again. But I didn't tell a soul, not yet, because I needed them to keep talking, to keep underestimating me, to keep acting like I owed them everything for being under their roof. I waited for the moment when their words would hang in the air, loud enough for Jaden to hear, and then I'd strike. That moment came sooner than I expected. A few days after signing the lease, my mom came into the kitchen as I cooked and said, "Just so you know, we're running low on paper towels, and since you're eating here, maybe you could pitch in for once." Kevin, never missing a beat, added from the living room. "Or maybe pay rent like the rest of us." I bit my tongue. So hard I tasted blood. The rest of us. He didn't pay a single cent. Jaden sat frozen at the table, pencil paused mid-homework, looking up at me. I looked away. That night, I pulled him aside and handed him an envelope. Inside was the rent confirmation and a letter from the landlord proving the lease was in my name. I told him, "If Grandma or Uncle say anything again, I want you to give this to her, but only when you're ready." He looked at me as if I'd handed him a sword, solemn and steady, understanding the weight of what he held. Jaden, my brave boy, had witnessed months of humiliation, but now he carried the truth. I didn't know exactly when the moment would come, but I was ready to prove them wrong without uttering a single word. For months, I swallowed every insult, every backhanded comment, every condescending look from Kevin, like I owed him for simply existing under my mother's roof. I told myself I was enduring it all for Jaden, that as long as he was safe, as long as we had a roof, even a bitter one, I could bear it. But that night, looking into Jaden's eyes, I saw the pain of acceptance there, that resigned look of a child who's learned that love comes with conditions, that family support is only given when it feeds their pride. I realized I wasn't protecting him by staying silent. I was teaching him the wrong lesson. So I made a choice. I was done being small. I didn't need their approval, their validation, or their shelter anymore. I had already paid for a year, at our own place with my name on the lease. Jaden would finally have a home without shame hanging over us like a chandelier. But I wouldn't slip away quietly. After months of their cruel performances, of turning my struggle into a spectacle, I wanted to show them their assumptions were dead wrong. Not with anger or shouting, but clean, clear, undeniable proof. So I sat Jaden down, just the two of us, and handed him a plain white envelope containing the lease, the receipt, and a letter from our landlord confirming that the apartment was ours. No questions, no strings. He looked at it, then back at me. "Is this real?" he asked. "Yes, baby," I said softly. "We're moving into our own place next week, but I want you to hold on to this for me." He nodded, clutching the envelope like it was fragile glass. "What do I do with it?" he asked. I leaned in and whispered, "You give it to Grandma the next time she says something mean or untrue about us living here. He blinked, unsure. Won't she get mad? Maybe, I said. But you won't be saying anything mean. You'll just be telling the truth. And the truth. Truth is nothing to be afraid of. He nodded again. This time, with more certainty than ever, I told him, I can do this. In that moment, I felt a shift between us. Jaden wasn't just a child anymore. For months, he had watched me fight in silence. But now, he was stepping into that fight, not with anger or noise, but with quiet courage and unwavering clarity. The next few days, I went about our routine like nothing had changed. Cooking dinner, doing the dishes, keeping the fragile peace. My mother's passive-aggressive digs continued. Kevin's smug smirks stayed sharp, and I kept my silence. But inside, I was no longer afraid. I was waiting, biding my time, knowing it was only a matter of time before their careless words would slip out loud enough, cruel enough, shameless enough to tear open the door they'd built around us. And when that happened, Jaden would walk right through it. He wasn't just going to defend me, he was going to shatter every lie they'd spun. It happened on a Sunday evening, chicken night, a ritual my mother clung to, like some sacred tradition, meant to feel like family but always thick with tension. I had roasted the chicken myself that night, as I usually did. My mother claimed her back hurt, yet never missed a chance to remind us she was still feeding 2 extra mouths. Kevin sat early, fork poised like he was doing us a favor, by simply showing up. Jaden sat quietly beside me, hoodie zipped up tight, the envelope tucked safely inside. No reminder needed. We were both waiting. The dinner began tense but silent. Kevin grumbled about the Wi-Fi. My mother sighed heavily as she passed the salad bowl like I'd asked for the moon. I tried to focus on my plate but felt the weight in the room building, like a storm about to break. Then it happened. My mother put down her glass, fixed me with a sharp look, and said, "You know, Amamira, most daughters would be grateful just to be allowed to live here. Some people would be out on the streets." I didn't flinch, didn't respond, just cut into my chicken, waiting. Kevin chuckled and added, "Yeah, your kid eats because of us. Let's not forget that." That's when Jaden stood slowly, the scrape of his chair on the tile slicing through the silence like a scream. He reached into his hoodie, pulled out the white envelope, and calmly walked over to my mother, placing it gently before her. "The landlord said to give you this," he said, voice steady and clear. "Mom, you already paid rent for the whole year?" My mother blinked, stunned. Kevin's face froze like he'd been slapped. Jaden returned to his seat, folded his hands in his lap, and kept eating as if nothing had changed. I said nothing. I didn't have to. My mother opened the envelope, slowly, eyes scanning the lease, the receipt, the letter addressed to me. Her mouth parted, but no words came. She looked up at me and I held her gaze, calm, steady, not angry, just done. Kevin finally broke the silence. "Wait, what's this? You paid rent somewhere?" I looked at him and said simply, "Yes." "For a whole year?" My mother whispered, "Yes," and I repeated, "For a whole year." The silence that followed was the heaviest that house had ever known. No one moved, no one dared breathe, because for the first time, they had no words, just the hard, undeniable truth on the table. Every assumption, every whispered insult, every arrogant look, all lies, now stamped with a date, a signature, a receipt. Jaden looked at me, not seeking approval, but reassurance. I nodded barely, and he smiled just a little, the proudest moment of my life. My mother rose quietly and took her plate to the kitchen without a word. Kevin muttered something under his breath and left the table. Jaden and I finished our meal in silence. No voices raised, no arguments needed. The truth didn't require volume. That night changed everything. I hadn't just proven I could take care of myself. I proved I never needed their permission to exist. And Jaden saw what real strength looked like, not in shouting or fighting, but standing tall when no one expected it. We left the next morning with no drama, no slammed doors, just quiet packing and steady hands. Jaden helped fold clothes, stack boxes, carry bags. He said little, but that silence spoke volumes. My mother never came out of her room. No last bitter words, no fake offers to help, just the distant creak of floorboards and the TV humming behind her door. Kevin stayed in the basement, not even looking up. And I was fine with that, because for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Free not just from that house, but from the crushing weight of their judgment, the need to explain myself, the pressure to shrink so they could feel tall. We drove away in silence for miles until Jaden finally asked, "You okay, Mom?" I smiled. Not the forced smile I wore at that kitchen table, but a real one, tired but proud. "Yeah," I said, "I really am." The apartment we moved into wasn't fancy. Scuffed walls, creaky floors, a stubborn front door. But it was ours. It smelled like new paint and hope. Surrounded by boxes, I finally breathed. Jaden dropped his bag, walked to the window, and said, "We finally did it." "Yeah," I whispered, blinking back tears. That night we ate pizza on the floor, cross-legged among unopened boxes. Jaden leaned back against a stack of towels and said, "This feels like home already." And it did. Not just a space, but peace, ownership of our lives. I used to think strength meant silence, enduring insult, shrinking to survive. But that's not strength. That's fear dressed up as endurance. True strength is knowing your worth when no one else does. It's walking away without looking back. I thought I was protecting Jaden by staying quiet, but I learned that children don't just learn from words. They learn from what you accept. He watched me take every jab, every sneer, every false debt my family tried to chain us with. But he also saw me rise, going to work every night without complaint, stretching every dollar, skipping luxuries, and when the time came, standing up for me, not because I told him, but because he saw real courage with his own eyes. He learned kindness is not weakness, and I learned my silence was teaching him to stay small. Never again. Leaving that house didn't just free us physically, it reset something deep inside us both. The shame started to fall away, replaced by pride. Jaden held himself taller, laughed louder, moved through the world like a boy who finally knew he was safe. Weeks turned to months. I picked up steady hours. We furnished our home piece by piece. I even bought a little plant that sits on the windowsill, a reminder that even after roots grow in rocky soil, growth is possible with care. I haven't spoken to my mother since we left, not out of anger, but because I'm done proving my worth to those who refuse to see it. Some say forgive and forget, but sometimes peace only comes when you walk away. So if you're watching this and you feel stuck, ashamed, or small, hear me. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to leave what hurts. You don't owe anyone your silence just to keep the peace. Stand up, even if your voice shakes, even if you need to hand the truth to someone else to say for you, because truth, when spoken calmly and clearly, is louder than any lie they ever told about you. If this story touched you, even a little, if you've ever been made to feel small, invisible, or like you had to apologize for simply surviving, know you're not alone. There's strength in kindness, power in rising again. And sometimes the quietest voice in the room is the one that changes everything. If you felt that, please like, share, comment your story, or just say hi. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories, real strength, and hope when you need it most. Thank you for being here. Truly. We'll see you next time.